Hey, what's up, Anchored family? Hope that all of you guys are doing well. Just want to say thank you for visiting us again for another edition of Anchored Live. I want to ask you guys a question. Are you ready for it? I can't wait to hear your answers. Have you ever listened to a song so much that it got absolutely stuck in your head and into your mind? That no matter where you were at or no matter who you were with, that when you hear those opening lyrics or lyric or that opening beat, you would start singing and humming, or maybe, gosh forbid, you would even start dancing to that song. I remember a few years ago when Amaya was in middle school, she was a huge One Direction fan. And so we spent the better part of her middle school years listening to nothing but One Direction music, whether it was going to the store, dropping her off, or picking her up from school, or going on beach trips, or just going anywhere. One Direction was always and the only thing that was on our playlist. And so I began to hear the lyrics and memorize the lyrics, unfortunately. And soon enough, man, I knew those lyrics like the backside of my hand. And so one night I was running some errands for my wife, and it was late at night. I was grabbing some things from the store, and That's What Makes You Beautiful came on, and it was just the instrumental. And so I'm in the aisle by myself, and what do you do when you're by yourself and you hear a song that you know and that's in your mind? You start singing it, right? And so I started singing this song out loud in the middle of the grocery store because I thought I was by myself. And then all of a sudden, this lady turns the corner and she stops and she looks at me and she starts smiling and she starts laughing because here I am, this middle-aged guy singing "That's What Makes You Beautiful." Well, I want to talk to you tonight, not so much about One Direction songs, but I want to talk to you about a truth from the book of Habakkuk that it was so foundational and so important that it became lodged, if you will, in the hearts and the minds of the New Testament writers. It was such a well-known verse, like a well-known song, that it would be referred to over and over again in the New Testament to show that the only way that we could ever be made right in God's sight was by simply trusting in Jesus Christ. And so Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, I'm going to go ahead and read that. It says this: "Look at the proud. They trust in themselves, and their lives are crooked. But the righteous will live by their faithfulness to God." Again, but the righteous will live by their faithfulness to God. In Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4, let me just give you a little context. You remember last week, Habakkuk, he was wrestling with God because God had revealed to him that he was going to use the nation of Babylon to spank his covenant children of Israel for violating the terms of the Mosaic covenant. And so Habakkuk hears this. He's not happy about it. He's quite disturbed by it. And so he complains to God about it, about how could you use this wicked nation of Babylon to punish your covenant people, to punish your children. And so he complains, and then he goes up on his watchtower. He says, I'm going to wait here. I'm going to wait for you to answer me. And so God finally answers him in Habakkuk 2, verses 2 through 3. And he basically says to Habakkuk, hey, listen, I hear your complaint, Habakkuk. Not only do I hear your complaint, but you're right. Babylon is wicked, and I will punish them, but it's going to be way in the future. And so you're going to have to wait patiently. And even though it's going to take a while, it's going to take some time, I will punish the nation of Babylon for their guilt and for their sins and crimes. And then in verse 4, there's this contrast between the wickedness of Babylon and the wickedness of the king of Babylon versus the righteous person. And what does God say? That the proud person, the king of Babylon, lives by trusting in themselves and in their own strength. But in contrast, the righteous will live by their faithfulness to God. Again, just like a song that is well known and it gets stuck in your head, the truth of Habakkuk 2, verse 4, it would be stuck in the hearts and in the minds of the New Testament writers as they would explain and teach people that the only way we could ever be made right in God's sight is by our faith in Jesus Christ. In the book of Romans, the book of Galatians, as well as the book of Hebrews, the New Testament writers would quote Habakkuk 2:4 to teach people that the only way they could ever be made right in God's sight is simply by trusting in God and by their faith in God. This verse not only was so important to the New Testament writers, but it was also important to that old German monk, Martin Luther. Many of you know Martin Luther's story. If you don't, let me just kind of share with you. He was a German monk in the 1500s. He was Catholic, a Catholic monk, if you will, and he was really wrestling with the idea that a holy and a just God could ever make sinful, wicked man right. And so he was wrestling with, how is it that sinful, wicked, rebellious man could ever be in right standing with God? And so as he's wrestling with this, on 3 separate occasions, God would whisper the truth of Habakkuk 2:4 to him. He was whispering it to him to show that Martin Luther couldn't earn his righteousness by his good works or by abstaining from evil works or from abstaining from sin, but that righteousness isn't something that we could earn, but its righteousness is something that's received as a result of our faith in God. And so Martin Luther, as he's struggling with how righteousness can occur in our lives, we're told a story that he finds himself going to Rome one year, and he's in Rome, and he sees this set of stairs. It's 28 stairs that, according to the church in Martin Luther's day, and even today, they said that these were the very stairs that Jesus climbed as he was on trial there before Pontius Pilate. And according to the church in Luther's day, that if Luther and others would simply climb up these stairs on their knees, and they would say a prayer, and they would say a prayer and kiss the stairs, that if they did this, they could earn pardon for sins, as well as get people out of purgatory, which was the teaching of the Catholic Church. And so Luther, being the devout monk that he was, he wanted to earn pardon for sins, and he wanted to get his uncle out of purgatory. And so we're told that he starts climbing these stairs one by one. Again, not on your feet, but climbing them on your knees. And each stair, he would say a prayer, he would kiss the stairs, and then he would go to the next, and to the next, and to the next. Well, we're told in Luther's biography that he climbs these stairs. He's about halfway, 3/4 of the way, if you will, and God whispers the truth of Habakkuk 2:4 to him, that the just or the righteous shall live by their faith. That the just shall live by their faith. As soon as that truth came to Martin Luther's mind, we're told that he stopped, and then he went home to Germany, and some say that the Reformation began on those stairs, and that the torch was lit, so to speak. Now, I know some of you are thinking to yourself, how funny and foolish of Martin Luther and others to think that they could simply climb some stairs in order to receive pardon for sins. But you know what? Let's be very real and very honest. We may not climb literal stairs, so to speak, to try to earn God's favor and righteousness, but we often find ourselves trying to climb other stairs in order to receive God's favor and righteousness. Let me ask you a question. What stairs are you or have you been climbing in order to try to earn God's favor? You know what God would say to you and to me tonight? That if you have been in a state or in a posture of climbing stairs to try to earn something from God, God would say, stop climbing and start looking to the cross of Jesus Christ. Start looking to the cross of Jesus Christ. Because guess what? The good news of the gospel is this. You and I don't need to try to climb stairs in order to get to God. And we don't need to climb stairs in order to receive God's righteousness. Because the good news tells us this. The gospel tells us this. That rather than us trying to climb to God, to earn from God, that God came down from heaven to give to us what we could never do and earn on our own. He came down as the God-man, Jesus. And he came and he lived a sinless life, and he died a sacrificial death. And then he rose the third day supernaturally so that you and I could be put in right standing with him, not by our good works or our good deeds, but simply by trusting in the one who did everything on our behalf. Listen to these words by the Apostle Paul in Romans 10:9. He says this, "For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved." Again, let me read that. It is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is openly declaring your faith that you are saved. You know what the Apostle Paul is saying here is this, that we are put in right relationship with God, not by climbing stairs of performance, but simply by believing in Jesus and trusting in his righteousness on our behalf. And so tonight, if you've found yourself in a place where you have been climbing stairs, tonight is the night to stop that. It's the night to stop trying to climb stairs in order to earn from God. Instead, it's simply receiving his gift. It's saying, thank you, Father, for your gift of righteousness through your Son, and simply believing in Jesus. And the Bible says this, that if you do that, you will be in right standing with him. That there will be no stairs to climb. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. For some of you, you might be sitting here saying, you know what, Jared? I get this. I understand this good news, this gospel, that Jesus did for me what I can never do on my own. But you know what? Maybe you have some friends in your life. Maybe you have some family members. Maybe you have some people who think that Christianity is all about climbing stairs and doing good things in order to earn salvation. I want to encourage you tonight, if you have friends and you know people who have this warped view of what Christianity is all about, that you would maybe share with them this video and the truth of Romans chapter 10, verse 9. That you would maybe send it to them and say, hey, listen, I know that you have questions, or maybe you've questioned what Christianity is all about. Or maybe you have friends that, you know that they're just trying to climb their way to God and trying to perform and trying to earn in order to receive God's favor and blessings and righteousness. That you would send this to them so that they could hear the good news and be free, like Martin Luther and the Apostle Paul, and like you and like me. That they would be able to know that they don't have to climb stairs anymore. They simply believe in the one who came and not just climbed down from heaven, but he climbed up a cross. He died on the cross for you and for me. And then he rose the third day so that we could be forgiven perfectly and completely for every sin that we've ever committed, ever will commit. Isn't that good news? It's a good news worth celebrating. And so tonight, get off of the stairs and just trust in Jesus Christ. He loves you guys. He died for you guys. And I hope that just like those One Direction songs that are lodged in my head, that the truth of this gospel, the truth of this good news, it will be stuck not just in your heads, but in your hearts and on your mouth, and you'll be able to share it with other people. So God bless you guys. See you next week.